Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Stevie B. I'm a grateful believer and I'm a recovered alcoholic. And the Lord set me free from my complete and utter depravity on January 3rd of 2002, and for that I'm eternally grateful. Let's give God all the glory. Every time I speak about God and what He has done for me, I look around and see so many miracles on what He is doing right now. I heard a speaker the other day say that he didn't want to spend any time talking about what happened. That he felt that if he spent too much time talking about what happened, then it would get lost in the message like a drunk along. But if I don't tell you what happened, how are you going to know how much I've been taken out of? If I don't tell you how bad it was, how can I compare it to how good it is? It was bad. Was it bad for anybody else? It was bad. That table over there, not so bad for that. Well, it was bad for me. Good. That one guy over there, the rest of them all went to the wrong meeting. It was bad. I mean, it was bad for a long time. With God, everything. Like, what's the crime? I'm like, there's a crime going on right now. Come arrest me. I knew there was a problem when I called the police on myself. That's a problem. I always knew the police were coming in at any time. I don't even know how the rest of you were arrested because the whole task force was against me. Isn't it so great not to have intense paranoia today? When I see blue lights on the street and someone's getting pulled over, or even a couple times I got pulled over in the last 23 years, I am not panicked. I was on the way to a meeting and the police officer pulled me over. He said, "Do you know you were speeding?" And I said, "Yes, officer, I do. But I'm on my way to a faith-based recovery meeting. I've given my life to the Lord. I know I should slow down. Whatever you do, I respect. I just want to let you know that I apologize for speeding." And he said to me, "Do I know you from Lighthouse Community Church?" I said, "Yes, you do. I'm one of the ministers there at Lighthouse Community Church." He said, "Is it right that the minister should be speeding around town over here like a flying fish?" I go, "No, officer." He goes, "Well, I'm going to give you a warning this time." I said, "Thank you so much, officer." 24 years ago, I was in the parking lot on Sheridan Street on the way to my therapist's office. My car was completely full of illegal material. I passed out on the way to the doctor. I pulled into a parking space on a 45-degree angle and I passed out. Remember those times when you did so much for so long that you just pass out? I just passed out over the wheel. Next thing you know, the police officer's knocking on my window with the flashlight. I woke up like any good alcoholic. I'm like, "What? I'm sleeping in here." He's like, "Get out of the car." And then I say what any good alcoholic will say. I said, "Do you know I'm a resident of Hollywood and I pay your salary?" Christian, that's not something to say to a law enforcement officer. Bam, he punches me in my chest. For 4 years or 5 years, I walked around saying all my problems were because of the Hollywood Police Department, because that guy punched me in my chest. I had him on my fourth step. I was thinking about him. I'm like, if I ever run into that guy again, well, it's going to be over. Then I finally did my fourth step, and I realized I was 1,000% wrong across the board. I was high. I was passed out. I was at a 45-degree angle. I could have put this man's life in jeopardy. Here's a guy working for the city of Hollywood where I do pay taxes so that he keeps it clean, and I'm giving him a hard time, and I was charging him, and he punched me because I was charging him. You know, it's amazing when you go from being a victim and you put down your victim mentality, you really can start to see how much we participate in our own problems and our own demise. The 12-step program is a lot more than getting clean and sober. Everyone thinks it's about sober. For me, the 12-step program, I came in for my drinking and I stayed for my thinking. My beautiful wife is walking around here. That means I'm still married. And just to tell you how much she has heard me already, she's right over there speaking. She has not even noticed I was speaking for the last 15 minutes. That's how much my story is impacting her right now. I grew up with the 12-step house. That's why I want the 12-step house. And ask me for anything. The answer is yes. I owe my sobriety. I owe part of my sobriety. I owe part of my life to the 12-step house. Almost everything in the last 35 years that has to do with my sobriety has to do with the 12-step house. This is not a meeting about the 12-step house, but I just want to tell you how much the 12-step house has impacted me. When I got off the plane when I was 24 years old, and I called up the intergroup office, and I said to Diane, a woman that worked in intergroup or was volunteering, I said, Diane, I need a meeting tonight, otherwise I could possibly drink. And I had already a year. And a woman by the name of Diane told me to go to the 12-step house. When I went to the 12-step house, I met my sponsor, Myron, who happened to be my sponsor for the next 7 years. I met another character that's here today. I don't know if he's still here. His name is Paul. He was married to a woman by the name of Wendy. The two of them took me in like a little brother. And then another couple by the name of Lindsay and Patsy took me in like a little brother. And then another person by the name of Danny and Deborah took me in like a little brother. And then another one by the name of Maury abused me like a little brother. And they took me around the 12-step house. I was 23 years old. I thought I had all the answers. And they said, listen, kid, you don't have any of the answers. Just know that we have some of the answers, and all you need to do is follow us, and everything's going to work out. For 5 years, I followed those people around. I went to meetings. I did all the, and everything was fine. And I was about to meet my wife. What happened in those 5 years of putting down drugs and not putting in God is I actually got sicker and sicker, and I didn't know it. Because what I would do is I would work on the outside. See, if you work on the outside, people don't really know what's going on in the inside. A lot of people told me today, Stevie B, man, you look good. This person, they say, you look good. Hey, Stevie B, you look good. They don't know what's going on in the inside. So I had figured that out. So my first sobriety, I worked on everything on the outside. Steroids, car. Oh, there's Paul that took me in like a little brother that I just mentioned. I worked on everything on the outside. And what happened is the inside started to fall apart. But nobody could tell because the outside was doing pretty good. They would see me, they go, Stevie B, you look good. And I'd be like, I'm dying. I wanted to say, I'm dying. But I couldn't say I was dying because I had 5 years. And when you get 5 years, you're not supposed to be dying. But I want to share something with you. If you're here and you got 5 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, this is not a club for people that look good and are doing good. This is a program for people that are not well, and on any given day, any of us could be not well, and we need to let the person next to us know if you're not well. You don't lose your membership in Alcoholics Anonymous because you're having a tough day. Nobody starts looking down on you because you say, listen, I need some prayer today. I feel like drinking and I got 25 years. Because we've had people at 27 years, 30 years, 32 years take their own lives because they couldn't tell people that they weren't feeling well. And I didn't think I could tell anybody I wasn't feeling well. So I just kept putting more stuff in me, more stuff in me, more stuff in me. And then I saw her. Hey, Sandy. That's her right there. I saw her. And she was working at the same job I was working at. And Ray knows that place, and Jerry knows that place, because I worked there for 20 years. She happened to be visiting in the circus at the work that I was at. And when I saw her, I'd never seen such a beautiful Latina she had like showgirl feathers on, and she was riding on an elephant. This is all true. And I had like big arms and a Mustang Cobra and 5 gold chains, but I had never seen a Latina on an elephant before. And I said, if I can get that girl, maybe this God-sized problem that I have inside me where I want to kill myself and everybody else around me, maybe if I can get that girl, she'll fix the problem. Like, I could have worked the steps. I could have got on my knees and prayed to God. I could have did an inventory. I could have worked with a sponsee, but instead I saw her and I said, I think that she can fix me. And for a while she did. You know, people can fix you for a while until they become your higher power. And then they'll find out that people cannot replace God. And we got married, but by the time we got married, I had full-blown alcoholism. I mean, full-blown. I had not drank in 5 years, but you wouldn't know it. My current sponsor at the time, because Myron gave me a little break, was John Williams. And John Williams was a famous guy in the Pompano Beach group. And he was just an amazing man. And Tomer was there, and Tomer and John Williams were there, and this guy was speaking while John Williams was speaking. And I didn't like that. And I was all juiced up. And I went up to the guy in the meeting in the middle of the Pompano Beach group in front of 150 people. And I go, yo, my sponsor's speaking. He goes, and before I knew it, I headbutted him in front of the entire meeting. Like my head didn't know I was sober. My head didn't know that I was in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. My head had not worked the 6th and 7th step. I was still walking around like a defect looking for character. And bam, I headbutted him. My sponsor looked over at me like in horror. Can you imagine you're trying to conduct a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and your sponsor, who's supposed to listen to the steps, headbutts another person? And by the way, this guy was from Brooklyn, so it's not like he went down and there wasn't anything on. We rolled over tables, stuff fell off the walls. It was a whole scene. So by the time I married Sandra, I was stark raving sober. And we went to New Orleans for our wedding, for our anniversary, for our honeymoon, and she didn't know that New Orleans stood for debauchery. Because she's from Colombia, and I told her that New Orleans stands for Louis Armstrong and jazz. And so we were eating our first meal, and our first meal consisted of 3 people. It was my wife, it was me, and my ego. The 3 of us were having dinner for our first meal. And then the table next to us, they were drinking fine wine that gets presented in a decanter, and they put fine wine in the middle of the table, and they let it breathe. Now, I had never seen anything like it. I was hanging out with Paul and Lindsay, and we didn't ever see fine wine that need to breathe first. We're like Mad Dog 2020 guys. And when I saw that there was something that was like fine wine that needs to breathe first, right there I felt I was not powerless over alcohol anymore. I want to share something with you. If you're here today and you feel that you only have a problem with drugs, and you don't have a problem with being powerless over alcohol, I want to share something with you. You're going to drink. You can't be an Alcoholics Anonymous and not feel that you're not powerless over alcohol. Because eventually at 2 o'clock in the morning, or when you're in Bimini, or when you're wherever it is, and you got your Bluetooth on, and you're not listening in the meeting, guess what's going to happen? You're going to say, I can have a drink because you're not powerless over alcohol. You know you can't do drugs because any druggie knows you can't do drugs. But how alcohol gets in is alcohol says, I'm different than drugs. It's amazing. Alcohol is such a subtle foe. And alcohol told me I could drink fine wine. Richie, you ever had fine wine? I never did. I tried the experiment. I tried the whole experiment, and the finest wine I got was Japanese rice wine in a box from August Moon Chinese food restaurant on Federal Highway. I gave 7 years of sobriety away for Japanese rice wine in a box. And the moment I took one sip of that alcohol, my whole addiction became alive, and I wanted drugs also. Because I'm a real alcoholic, I'm just not a pure alcoholic. So I'm an Endor guy. Like, you got it? I want Endor. But alcohol is always the entrance thing for me, because if you come over to me, like one of the things I did, and my wife can attest to this, is I did a drug that I had never heard of, and I didn't do it to get high. This is my thinking. I'm 5 years sober and I want more muscles. I'm always in search for more muscles. So if I see a guy with more muscles than me, I go up to him, I go, what are you taking on the side? And the guy said to me, he goes, I'm taking this substance and it gives you more muscles when you sleep. I go, I gotta have some. Now I'm 5 years sober, I don't want to get high. I just want more muscles. But if you're not working the program, if you're not doing a step 6 and 7, you're going to allow things that you shouldn't allow into your life because you're not prepared and you don't have the armor of God up and you're not doing anything to prepare yourself for the fire, for the fight. And the guy tells me, listen, I can get you a jug of this. Yeah, a guy at Home Depot named Chulo makes it. I go, well, how much do you take? He goes, well, if you take a capful, you're going to have amazing sleep and you're going to wake up in the morning with more muscle. But a capful might not be enough, so you may have to take 2 capful, and in between the 1 and 2, some people die. I go, how much is the drug? How much is it? Like, my first response is, when he tells me I could die, it's not like, oh, that's something I will never do. That's terrible. Do you have to have a prescription? What type of doctor? I'm 5 years sober, and my best thinking is, how much is the jug? You see, people equate sobriety with what the Bible says is to be sober-minded and put your mind on things above. Physically sober is not mentally sober. I know people physically sober that go to jail, that do terrible crimes, that do things in there. You know how I know that? Me. I went to jail 3 times sober, but not mentally sober. I went to jail coming out of the Fort Lauderdale men's group on a Wednesday night. Because coming out of the Fort Lauderdale men's group, I saw a woman on the street, and I said, I'd like to give her a ride. So I pulled over and I said, would you like a ride? And it was a police officer. You get arrested for that. So now I'm arrested and I'm sober. It's called solicitation. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. But now I'm in jail with other people from the 12-step house that just recently relapsed. And they see me and they go, Stevie B, what are you doing in here? And now I got to make up more lies and pretend that I'm from the institutions committee and we're taking meetings inside the jail. Like Brother Ray. But I was not physically sober. And now I have to tell people in the home group that when they say, hey Steve, we saw you with handcuffs behind, and I got to make up another lie. And then my wife says, she wasn't my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend. She says, where were you till 3 o'clock in the morning? Got to make another lie. So the principle behind the first step is honesty, and I'm physically sober, but I'm not mentally sober, so I can't. Now I'm lying all over the place. The moment you start lying in Alcoholics Anonymous, you stand in the way of the sunlight of the Spirit coming through the window, and God can't get to you with all that muck you're putting on the window. So now I'm lying about the steroids, I'm lying about the prostitute, I'm lying about where I was till 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm lying to the guys inside the jail telling them that I'm with hospitals and institutions when I'm a criminal. And the next thing you know, my mind tells me to have a drink, so I have a drink. Why? I have no mental, what's the word, Ray? I have no mental defense. Thank you, Brother Jerry. I have no mental defense because I'm playing with the devil. And I think because I'm 6 years sober that the devil can't get me. Okay. I'm sitting in my house, now high and drunk, and saying, how does a nice guy like me get here? So what do? I go back to the 11-step group where Paul was and Lindsay was and some of the people in here were. I go back to the 11-step group and I raise my hand and I tell them, I don't really think I'm an alcoholic. I think I've discovered another way. And I talked myself into believing that. And here's the bottom line. I had to lose everything. I had to lose everything. My wife had to serve me with a restraining order. I turned into a bum. I destroyed our house. I had to go live in a halfway house. I had owned a full house like the week before. Now I'm living with somebody else, and Stinky Feet Mason and Big Eddie and Todd that chewed tobacco. Like I just got married to this beautiful Colombian wife, and now I got to live with Stinky Feet Mason. It's a total downgrade. I get my new sponsor, who's my old sponsor. I call him. He lives in San Francisco. I say, will you please sponsor me again? Isn't it amazing? The sponsors that we had once before that were great, that we fired them because we're not great, and somehow we need a different sponsor. So I call him. I said, listen, would you sponsor me? I relapsed. I said, listen, I know this is shocking, but I relapsed. He goes, we've been waiting for this for years. And he says, I want you to start praying on your knees inside the detox and ask God to keep you clean and sober every single day that you're in that detox. I want you to ask God to keep you clean and sober. I'm like, I don't need to ask God to keep me clean. I'm in a detox. And plus, I knew he was Jewish, so I figured I'd like use the religion card. I said, Jerry, Catholics and Christians, we don't pray on our knees outside of Mass. I figured he wouldn't know. He goes, well, then just get yourself another sponsor. Because if you can't ask God inside the detox to keep you clean and sober, you're not going to ask him when you get out of the detox. Because if I invited you to come over my house, and you came over my house, and you grabbed the food, and you didn't say please for the food, and then you stood up, and you didn't say thank you for the food, I would never invite you back again, would I? I said, no, of course not. So he said, why would you be in God's world one day and not ask for the gift of sobriety, please, and not thank him? Do you think he's going to give you the gift of sobriety tomorrow? And I said, well, that makes sense. He said the disease of alcoholism is not a flat-footed cop that walks around the streets of New York with a donut in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other hand. The disease of alcoholism is like a Secret Service agent that walks in and out of parties unnoticed. And if you have any respect for your sobriety, you better have that much more respect for the disease of addiction. That makes sense. I started praying on my knees. But about 30 days into my program, I don't know if this ever happened to any of you, I started to feel like I was recovered. Because I had just had 7 years. And now I got 30 days. And so now I'm thinking about maybe I can get high one more time. Because even though I'm praying on my knees, Bad Steve still lives in there. And if I feed Bad Steve wins. And if I feed Good Steve wins. But I come up with a plan. Lenny P. from Narcotics Anonymous, he goes, what happened to you? Why did you almost get high? I said, Lenny P., I looked at my watch, and I saw I had a half an hour. He said, throw away the watch. You got too much time on your hands. I got up off my knees. I came up with this plan to get high one more time. I wasn't going to go on a run. I just wanted to do one more time. Pat, you know what I'm talking about. I just wanted to sneak one in. Like nobody was going to notice. Like I had some type of junkie superpower. And so I come up with this plan to call my wife, get $199, and then I was going to go on like a mini run, like a 3-hour run. Like I was going to be able to turn off the faucet as soon as I started again. Like that happens. So I get up off my knees and I come up with a plan. I actually ask God to keep me clean and sober, and then I come up with a plan to not be clean and sober. That's what lives in me right now. And I call up my wife, and I ask her for $199. Now, I see a lot of people go on runs today. They don't have any money behind them, and I don't know how that works, how you go on a run with no money. It doesn't make any sense to me. At least, that doesn't even seem like a run. That seems like a walk. You need to have some money behind you if you're going to go. So I call her up, and she says to me, she says, hold on. And I thought she's checking the bank account to see if we had the money so she can give me the money. But she had joined the Al-Anon meeting at the Melrose Park group. And those people loved my wife back to health. They gave her like a secret handshake and like some secret superpowers. And every time I tried to dope feed her, she's like, no. Now, I didn't cause it. Can't cure it. And I can't control it. I'm like, what kind of, she goes, that's the 3 C's. What kind of crazy Nazi program did you join while I'm in treatment? Can't control it. Didn't cause it. Can't cure it. Can I have the money? So her and her sponsor came up with this plan, and they loaded up my card with $199, and they set me up to fail, which I think is against the bylaws of Al-Anon. If anybody Al-Anon here, I still have a complaint. And I ran over to the Sprint store on Federal Highway because I had this plan. I would get the cheapest cell phone. I still have about $180 left. Then I go over to the man, and then I go to the bar, and I'll drink a little bit, and then by 5 o'clock, Mason would come home, and Eddie, and I'd be like this, hey, how was your day? Or like, I would be fine. And listen what God did. You see, God is not concerned if you don't believe in him. He's not up there going, man, they don't believe in me. Because all God cares about is that he believes in you. And all God cares about is that you're gonna make a way to meet him and stay with him. And I didn't know that. I'm running over to get high, and I go to the guy at the Sprint store, and I'm like, I need to have the cheapest cell phone you have. And the guy stands up, and he goes, hey, Stevie B, I saw you yesterday at the Victory AA meeting. Welcome back. And God sent me to the store with $199 to speak to a man in Alcoholics Anonymous, and all I want to do is get high, but God doesn't care what I want to do. He's got his own plans. The second step said, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We keep going and getting high because we don't want to rely on God. And when I say get high, there's all forms of sin that separate us from God. It's not just, that's just one. When we're in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and we drink, everyone says you failed. But there's a lot of people failing right now at this picnic that are failing right now, and they're separated from God, and they don't know why. They feel separated from God, and they're doing outside stuff to try to get closer to God. And all God is saying is, just pray to me. I want to have a relationship with you. And they're seeking all these things from the outside world. Marijuana and kratom and all this nonsense. And all you need to do is just stop, pause, and talk to God. And that's what he did. He took a moment and sent Jewish Drew from Alcoholics Anonymous, from the Victory AA meeting, and said to me, hey, I saw you yesterday at Victory, and I took pause. My wife invited me to come back and live in the house 11 months later. And when I was there the first night, I found my drug stash underneath our mattress that same first night I was there. Well, where was God in that? Let me tell you where he was. He gave me the strength to call my wife, and we threw it all away. Where was God when I decided to start a meeting at the 12-step house on Wednesday night, which was totally unpopular because they had the world famous men's group going on in the meeting, and they're like, you can't start your, how much time you got? I got 2 years. Like, you can't start a meeting at the same time with the world famous men's group next door. Nobody's going to come to your meeting. I go, well, I'm going to be there. And we started a meeting called the Higher Power Big Book Study. And we read it from the beginning to the end. And we said something like this in the beginning, because I'm not a big fan of cursing. We said, listen, don't curse. Not as the absence of profanity will offend nobody. We're like, don't curse in this meeting. We're trying to get closer to God. And we started with 5 people, 6 people, 7 people. Then we had like 10 people. Then I went away on a retreat. I met a guy by the name of Russell Spatz. I decided I want to start a Bible study. People say, you can't start a Bible study. What are your credentials? I love the Lord. I own a Bible. And I own a big book. Like, you can't do it. I said, okay. Went over to the St. Francis Mission. Same thing. What are your credentials? Don't have any. We'll get back in touch with you. I've been doing that meeting for 17 years right now, the same meeting. Around 5 or 6 years of sobriety, I want to start going around to treatment centers and telling people about Jesus. Don't get offended. You don't have to believe in Jesus. I'm just giving you my story. So I go to this place called Christian Recovery Solutions because I figured it's got the name Christian in it. They probably want to have me. So me and Mason show up at the front, and John Cates owns it. And I show up at the front, and they're like, "What? How can I help you?" I said, "We want to start taking a meeting in here and telling the newcomer that it's okay. They can believe in whatever they want, but if they want to believe in Christ, it's okay." She said, "What are your credentials?" I said, "I love the Lord. I got a big book, and I'm sober." She goes, "How many years?" 5 years. She goes, "We'll get back in touch with you." Now, during that time, I started sponsoring a young man out of Bark, and that young man, it just turns out that his father is a pastor. And it just turns out that the same place that I was trying to get a service commitment at, it turns out that they wanted to have a pastor on staff. And it just turns out that this young man that I met in Bark, he goes after Bark to that same treatment center. That same treatment center calls up the pastor, that young man's father, and said, "Would you come to breakfast? We want to talk to you about how to start a Christian track." And that young man's father says, "Well, I want to bring my son's sponsor with me. He knows a lot about recovery." I show up at breakfast, and the owner there that I never got to meet, he's at breakfast. And I get introduced as an expert. And the man says to me, "It seems like you know a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous. What is your credentials?" I go, "I love the Lord, I own a Bible, and I have the big book." He said, "Well, why don't you take a meeting into my treatment center?" I go, "I would like to do that." I show up at that place. The woman said, "Didn't I tell you we'll call you?" I said, "Well, the owner invited me to come here." She said, "Okay, well, I guess you'll be there." And I was there for the next 5 years. My wife and I were 10 years together, and we wanted to have a baby. During that time, millions of amazing things happened. We started a recovery house together called JC's. There's people here from that recovery house, Patrick Thrift and Bo, and a whole bunch of people. Those beautiful men back there, Steve Rogers. Rob, Brian. Rob, you brought Rob in when I was on vacation, which I was not happy about. I tried to keep Rob out for 2 weeks. Every time I come by Rob, he had this face that looked like he was withdrawn. I go, "Are you still here?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm still here." I go, "But Ray, don't give him a bed. Keep him in the chapel." But he didn't die, and now he's sober like forever, and now he sponsors half of Fort Lauderdale, and he works in the, just unbelievable. Rob Randolph, unbelievable story. One of the worst cases I ever had was this man, Jerry, who's now my brother-in-law. I was taking a meeting into the Cleveland house, and this guy Prescott says, "I want you to start sponsoring this guy Jerry." And I go, "Sure, I owe Alcoholics Anonymous so much, whatever I need to do." And he didn't even show up at the meeting that I was speaking at, so I had to go knock on his door. "Excuse me, I'm supposed to sponsor you." He says to me, "What are your credentials?" The guy just smoked crack an hour ago. He's asking my credentials. God always gave me the toughest people. Nancy knows how that is. Ray knows how that is. Jerry knows how it is. Brandon knows how it is. Listen, if you stay around long enough, you're going to go from being the problem to the person that is bringing the testimony. There is nobody in here that's any higher than anybody else. Nobody in here is any greater than anybody else. The highest membership that you can get in Alcoholics Anonymous, the highest status is member and servant. If you want to be a servant, then you meet the qualifications to carry the 12th step in Alcoholics. If you want to be a boss, that's another program. I follow the one that washes other men's feet. Hey, Sebastian. I follow the man that washes other man's feet. I'm a feet washer. Richie's a feet washer. Brandon's a feet washer. Maria's a feet washer. We wash other people. You want to have your feet washed today? I'll wash your feet. JP will help me. Sheldon will help me. Miriam will help me. Why? Because if you come here as wanting to be served, you're going to miss the boat. There's a beautiful couple over there that I married as a minister in their wedding. And just the most beautiful couple. That's their beautiful baby. We were both in the Keys for the first time. I'm in the Keys for the first time at a restaurant I've never been in. She's in the Keys with her husband. That's a restaurant they've never been in. She walks in. I said, oh my goodness, I married that couple. And she says, and I'm here today on our 1-year anniversary. We had never been together in a restaurant before. If you pay attention to all the God stories that are going on in your life, you won't even have time to talk about politics. How do you have time to talk about politics when all you should be doing is talking about what God has done in your life the last 6 months, the last 6 years, the last 16 years? He's doing so much all the time. What meeting have you just started? What sponsees are you taking around? What big books are you bringing? Ray got in trouble for bringing big books in. He used to have to smuggle big books into the jail. That's how crazy that this whole society has gotten into. He had to smuggle, like it was China. What is the next person you're helping? We had a baby. We lost the baby. We were devastated. We were not prepared. There was a beautiful man in our home group. Not yet. By the name of Ernie Richardson. He said, you need to pray for the acceptance of God's will. I want to share something with you. What you may hear in AA and other programs. They say stuff like this, and this could really break your heart. Because we have people here from the 12-step house whose wife was, whose daughter was murdered and chopped up in pieces. And if you say this to a person like this, well, God's only going to give you what you can handle. That is not the truth. Bad things happen, terrible things, hi Brian, and God will give you the strength to get through it. It's not that one person has a baby that's killed and another person loses their wife to cancer and then you can handle more. That's not how God works. That's not the character of God. Bad things happen. God will give you the strength to get through it. People die. God will give you the strength to get through it. You may lose a business. God will give you the strength to get through it. Your closest friends may turn on you. God will give you the strength. Your wife and husband may cheat on you. God will give you the strength to get through it. It's not that you're stronger so you get more poop. And we lost the baby. And a beautiful man by the name of Ernie Richardson said, pray for the acceptance of God's will. And another beautiful man in our home group named Happy Bob. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Happy Bob, because when I spoke here 2 years ago, Nancy, was it 2 years ago that I spoke here? 2 or 3 years ago. The last time I spoke here, Happy Bob, may God rest his soul, was here and he was playing music. And Happy Bob was a beautiful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Happy Bob introduced us to before I get there, we got kicked out of the adoption agency. Most people you know cannot get kicked out of an adoption agency. That's kind of a high type of a call. They called up my wife and they said, a man like your husband can never adopt in the state of Florida. You see my beautiful son right there? They said, you can't adopt in the state of Florida. There's nurses that are here today. Sally was here earlier. There's nurses that cannot get their nursing degree back. There's drivers of vans that they're not allowed to get their license back. There's people in the medical profession that are not allowed to work in the medical profession. There's people that are here that are attorneys that shouldn't work in the... Oh, there's Sally. See, when God tells you you're going to do something, let no man tell you you can't. And we know we were supposed to have a baby, but the state of Florida says you can't have a baby. And we call up Happy Bob, may God rest his soul, who's a famous attorney in the program before he got caught with 2 kilos. But he still had connections, not just for the kilos. And he said, call up this woman, Mindy, Jewish Mindy from Boca. And you'll like this story. And Jewish Mindy, maybe she can give you a home study. A home study is when they come in your home, just see if your home is worth it, if you can, is it okay if you can adopt a baby. And I say to Sandy, I said, Sandy, because by now Sandy and I are like over the top Christians. You know, we got the statues, we got paintings, you know, we got holy water from the sprinkler system, we got the T-shirts, we got bumper stickers, we got the whole thing. So I said to Sandy, what is that, Jerry? Yeah, I got the giant Jesus picture in my house, and I said to Sandy, when Mindy comes to do the home study, maybe we should take down giant Jesus. Just put him in the closet. And Sandy said, we're not going to pretend who we're not, right, Bill? We're not going to pretend. We can't pretend who we're not. God's been so wonderful to us, curing us of this terrible disease that we just want to go around telling everyone about it. And she says, we're not putting giant Jesus in the closet. And Mindy came in the house and she sees giant Jesus. And she looks at my testimony, prostitution, cocaine, alcohol, drunk driving. I mean, I must have looked like a stellar candidate. And she says, do you think God gave you another chance? Listen how amazing God is. Listen how amazing God is. This woman turned out to be a believer. She looked up at giant Jesus and she says, do you think God gave you another chance? I said, I know he did. She said, so how can I not give you another chance? Like Ray did with Bo. When Ray brought Bo to JC's, Bo came from the jail van. I had this envisionment of all these like college students and like good looking guys with polo shirts on. And Ray's vision was to get everyone from the jails that didn't have teeth yet. And I said, and here the van pulls up on Thanksgiving and Bo comes out. Yo, what's up, what's up, what's up, what's up? I go, oh man, this doesn't match up with my vision. See, because I look at it with God's eyes. Excuse me, I look at it with man's eyes. God looks at it with his eyes. He knew Bo was going to be here 11 years later, speaking around the world, playing in different venues, having his friends here, making music videos, doing Christian videos, going to this place, speaking in Compton, speaking in the south side of Chicago, speaking in Los Angeles, speaking in London. You keep looking at things with your eyes, you're going to get exactly what you used to get. I'll always be so grateful to you for all the men that you brought into my life. And Patrick. All the men and Patrick. Pat gave me the hardest time for years, Pat. But now look at him, over almost 2 years sober. Unbelievable. Let's give the Lord a round of applause for that. Ray used to always bring guys in and go, listen, this one's different. I go, oh, Jesus. And this woman, Mindy, signs off on the home study. And we get to fly up to the top of the United States. You know the story, Brian. You were with me during that time. And we meet our son's baby mama, baby mother. And she says, what would you like to name your son? And he was alive just one day. We said we'd like to name him Joshua. And she said, why Joshua? And we said in the Bible, Joshua 24:15 says, as for me and my house, we choose to serve the Lord. And she said, well, I'm not religious. I said, well, all this means that your son, our son, is going to grow up in a godly home where there's not going to be alcohol and cheating and fighting and all these crazy things. And 2 weeks later, we flew back with Joshua. And there was members of Alcoholics Anonymous on our lawn. Mason and Tim Stack and Eddie, and they had signs. And they said, welcome home, Joshua. And people from Alcoholics Anonymous watched our dogs. And people in Alcoholics Anonymous helped me raise Joshua in the rooms, right? Brian, we did our Jesus walks with Joshua on our chest. And you guys showed me how to be a dad. And you showed my mom how to be, my wife how to be a mom. And Alcoholics Anonymous in the program of Al-Anon and the love of God saved our lives. And when anyone anywhere says to me, would you, I don't have to ask them what the venue is. When they see Stevie B, can you bring your place? Yes. Stevie B, can you come speak here? Yes. Stevie B, would you get on a picnic? Yes. The answer is yes, because God always says yes to us. Can I get an amen? And I'll tell you, the last 23 years have been nothing short of a miracle. We wake up and we pinch ourselves. I couldn't speak a solid sentence after my run 23 years ago. It was a nightmare. I had lost my mind. I did drugs out there that people that are 32 and 33 should not do. I jumped up and down in clubs like this for 24 to 48 hours one time. One time I was in a club like this for 40 hours. I still had problems with my calves. And so when I came back, my brain was still fried. My wife, nobody could touch my skin. This is true. Nobody could touch my skin. I had lost all memory. People would come up to me at my store in the swap shop and they say, "Hey Steve, can I get 100 business cards?" And I say, "Sure." And then I turn around, the guy would come back a half an hour and I didn't remember him. God has been so good to all of us. It's a miracle that the big book says we are people that would not ordinarily mix. We got all walks of life. But the last thing I want to leave you is don't get too full of yourself. If you're doing great in life now, thank the Lord. And Richie and I know how Richie and I got too big for God. Me with the steroids and the fine and doing all that. Now, Richie was so busy. I would see him in meetings and he always has his Bluetooth on. I say, "Richie, nobody's too busy that you have to have your Bluetooth on." Richie's like, "Stevie, you don't understand. You don't know me." I said, "Richie, that's not a good time." Next time I saw Richie had relapsed. Richie was pushing shopping carts at BJ's shopping center for drug money. Richie went from pushing shopping carts into BJ's to owning, with his beautiful partners here, several amazing halfway houses. Him and his wife just retired. They got an unbelievable family. They got an unbelievable life. Because if you get too busy for God, God's going to get too busy for you. But if you take time to serve God, God will stand for you. If you're embarrassed to God, He's going to be embarrassed to you. If you're too busy for Him, He's going to be too busy for you. Isn't that right, Richie? Ray came up to me at a 12-tab house once. He had a leather jacket on. He just drove his very lousy, annoying motorcycle to the meeting, and he used to do a voo voo as a Harley Davidson, and he's going voo voo right before the meeting was starting, go voo voo and make a whole bunch of noise. And then he would walk in with his leather jacket and be like, "Yo, what's up? The kid is here." Oh my God. He asked me to sponsor him. I said no. It turns out we're from the same exact town. In all the years I've been in AA, I've never met anyone from the same exact town. We're from the same exact town, same exact high school. He asked me to sponsor him. I said no. That was what, 17 years ago, Ray? 15 years ago. Now he's the owner of James Club and James Club Foundation and all different programs, still taking the meetings in the jails. Don't get too big for God. And the last story I want to tell you is my brother-in-law, Jerry. Jerry was the worst drug addict I had ever known. I'm sure there's worse. Later on in life, I met Patrick Thrift. But before Patrick, it was Jerry. Jerry could not be trusted. Listen to this. This is my last testimony story. Jerry could not be trusted with a bicycle. A bicycle to Jerry was a rock. We'd get him a bicycle, and somehow he know how to manage a bicycle so where I didn't even know this. There's chop shops for bicycles in the city. A guy would get a tire, this guy would get the seat, this guy would get the bell, this guy would get a spoke. And Jerry would go on a run with a bicycle. He's like, "That guy gives me a lot for the spokes." He couldn't be trusted with $10. Jerry finally surrendered 10 years ago. And in that surrender, because he always knew who God was, but knowing God, who God is, doesn't mean anything. It's following God. There's a big difference in a believer and a follower, isn't there, Richie? Even the devil believes in God. But to be a follower of God is a different story. And Jerry went to be from a believer to a follower. And the most amazing story is this. While he was still getting high, he was coming to the recovery Bible study. And he'd be high and be like, same with that one, right? Where's Brandon? Brandon used to come to the Bible study. Where's Brian D? He's not here. Brandon used to come high. A lot of people come to the Bible study and they want to get closer to the Lord, so they get high right in the parking lot. And my wife's niece, who's like the most beautiful, precious, intelligent, pure girl, happened to be visiting my wife at the same time. And she comes home and she goes, who's the guy with the black hair? And she's talking about Jerry. I said, listen, anybody in the community but not Jerry. And God allowed the two of them to get together. Jerry had a $5,000 wedding ring in his pocket. He went to the country of Colombia, where they make our drug of choice, by himself. And he proposed on his knee to my wife's niece. Once the sun sets you free, you are free indeed. And every single person that you know that owns a recovery house down here, every one of them were the worst degenerates of all of them. Jerry, Ray, Nancy, me, Jimmy, Sal. The worst. Jimmy was an aluminum thief. That's the lowest of low. Because when you have gratitude, you want to spend the rest of your life helping people. Amen. Now in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's going to be different types of people. There's going to be people that are just here for sober. And you see them. They're the sober people. You see them in meetings. They say, how you doing? Hanging in there. How's everything? Been sober 53 years. Same shit for dick. Only reason I curse is because that's what they do. And then you're going to find the people that are living their life beyond their wildest dreams. They've given their lives to God. They're helping people. It's the same buffet. One buffet person stops and eats salad and croutons, and they take the crouton back, and they're eating the crouton on their plate with their fork and their knife, and you see them, and they're eating croutons. You go, and then we're eating steak. Same buffet. Either way, it's going to produce sober. But don't just stay at sober. A relationship with God will produce a life beyond your wildest dreams, which will produce sober in itself. Don't settle for sober when you can have everything. And what does that mean? What does that mean, Brian McLaughlin? Is it going to be easy? No. What does that mean? Could you lose a baby? Yes. Could you lose a job? Yes. Could you lose a company? Yes. Could you lose friends? Yes. But it doesn't matter. God still wins. At the end of the day, go to the back of the book. The back of the book says God still wins. And if you know that, if you know the one that you're going to serve, then you're not. You know, there's people that are offended right now today because I spoke too much about God. Last year they were offended because the speaker cursed too much. This year they're offended because he talks about God. Next year they're going to be offended because the guy's got one. I don't know. You can be offended by whatever you want. Or you could just jump in and have an amazing time. Right now, underneath these two pairs of glasses, I have an eye that's not only been shot out with a gun, but is totally infected right now. I have a lid that's completely infected. It feels like someone's stabbing me in my face right now. Did you sense that during? Of course not. Who cares? It's going to be what it is. I didn't think about canceling the talk because I have to wear two pairs of glasses and I'm in pain. Because would I have canceled the walk if someone told me that they had good drugs in Orlando? No. And that happened to me once. I went to Publix. My wife said, go and get something for dinner. We had a whole dinner table full of people. I went to Publix. I saw Nicky D. He said, you know, they got good stuff in Orlando. My wife said to me an hour later, where are you? I said, I'm on my way to Orlando. I want to pray of all of us. I want to pray and continue for the 12-step house. that we're here 25 more years and another 25 years, and that the young people, they start taking over, and then we'll have another 25 years, and then the 12-step house goes another 100 years, so that the next generation and the next generation and the next generation know how amazing God is. Father God, we just ask you to continue to be with us. Thank you for the gift of sobriety. We thank you for this meeting. We ask you to continue to bless the 12-step house financially, and with people that serve there and help there. We thank you for these picnics that have been going on for 20, 30, 40 years. We thank you for the people that came before us. We love you, Lord. We thank you for Bill and Bob, that you used them to write a book that shaped our lives and get us closer to you. We pray all these things in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.